We've all yelled at the screen during a scary movie, right? Don't go in there, turn around. It's a total classic trope. But today, we're actually going to dive deep and deconstruct the exact anatomy of that fatal decision. We are mapping out the psychological breakdown that literally leads someone straight into a nightmare.
Welcome to Scary Town. We've been waiting for you. Imagine hearing that chilling broadcast crackle through the static of an old radio in the dead of night. Now, your biological imperative, your basic common sense, should be to sprint in the opposite direction. But in this explainer, we're going to explore the fascinating and honestly fatal reasons why some people would actually follow that voice instead of running away.
The architect of this entire trap is the hooded skeleton broadcaster. With those glowing red eyes, jagged teeth, and menacing claws gripping a vintage microphone, he really serves as the psychological anchor for our victim. And here's the crazy part. He isn't actively chasing anyone down. He doesn't need to. He just uses his hypnotic, omnipresent voice to cast a deadly, irresistible lure, broadcasting a personalized invitation right into the darkest corners of the victim's mind. So, we need to understand that this descent into darkness isn't just a simple wrong turn. It is a highly systematic, three-step psychological breakdown of natural survival instincts. It starts with the lure to pique curiosity, moves to explicit warnings that are just actively ignored, and finally ends in an inescapable capture. Okay, so as the victim crosses the threshold into the town, the danger is incredibly obvious. You have a decaying, flooded street, a stormy sky, a terrifying spectral figure just standing there, and a massive, blood-splattered sign literally screaming, "Scary Town, don't visit this place," right alongside "Leave before dark." The victim totally ignores this massive red flag, which again is literally printed in blood. Why on earth would anyone keep going forward?
Well, to understand why you or anyone else would keep walking past a sign like that, we have to define the exact mechanism this broadcaster is exploiting. And that is morbid curiosity. It's basically an overpowering psychological urge to seek out disturbing, dangerous, or macabre subjects. Think of it as a glitch in human evolution, right? It's where the primal need for information completely overrides the fundamental need for safety. It's that dark, totally irrational itch in the back of your mind that just has to know what's hiding in the shadows, even if finding out might kill you.
And that morbid curiosity leads directly to this next moment. Walking down a dark, rain-slicked forest road, the victim is confronted with a super explicit environmental warning. There's a rusted sign in the dead leaves plainly stating, "Turn back now." And right ahead of them, that same ghostly figure is waiting, perfectly motionless in the mist under a flickering streetlight. I mean, the threat could not be any clearer. Yet, driven by that hypnotic broadcast and their own dark curiosity, they push right forward into the dark. And then, the environment rapidly shifts and the trap really tightens. Suddenly, they're in this incredibly claustrophobic tunnel. The open road is gone, entirely replaced by decaying concrete walls and rusting train tracks, leading into absolute blackness. The warnings here severely escalate from a calm turn back to desperate, frantic messages. The words "run, run, run" are literally smeared in fresh blood across the walls. The spectral figure is even closer now, drawing them deeper underground. The danger is no longer just implied, it is imminent and highly aggressive. Seeing these two environments side by side brilliantly illustrates the utter absurdity of the victim's denial. It's a fatal case of cognitive dissonance. Just contrast the initial, almost polite warning in that eerily quiet forest with the outright bloody panic of the underground tunnel. The victim willingly marched from an eerie threat directly into an active slaughter zone, completely ignoring the escalating red flags their own eyes were giving them. So how does a human mind actually allow this to happen? Well, it all comes down to a massive battle, the broadcaster versus reality. The broadcaster's voice, constantly whispering through the static right in their ears, is so psychologically powerful that it creates a blinding cognitive dissonance. The victim literally begins to trust the phantom audio, the siren song of the skeleton at the microphone, over the terrifying physical reality of blood-soaked walls and ghosts standing right in front of them. The audio completely overrides their visual processing and their common sense. This brings us to the final phase of the trap, dropping the victim into the decaying, claustrophobic corridors of a blood-stained, abandoned hospital. We're talking peeling paint, absolute darkness pressing in from every open doorway, and that same spectral figure waiting at the very end of the hall.
The victim is no longer just exploring. They are blindly following the lure deeper into the maze, completely cut off from the outside world, and honestly, any hope of rescue.
But before we hit the terrible climax of this trap, let's take a quick second to review the staggering list of warnings the victim had to consciously ignore to reach this point of no return. This is the true anatomy of denial. First, they ignored explicit bloody signs telling them to leave. Second, they willingly walked into increasingly hostile enclosed environments. Third, they trusted a demonic voice over their own rational sight. And ultimately, they just abandoned their self-preservation entirely. I mean, it takes a massive amount of active psychological effort to fall into a trap this deep.
And then the audio cuts out. In this isolated ward among rusting, empty hospital beds, the broadcast suddenly goes completely silent. The hypnotic voice is just gone. And this is the exact moment the morbid curiosity evaporates and the terrifying realization of the trap finally sets in. The victim is utterly alone, the illusion is completely shattered, and the horrific reality comes crashing back down on them.
Which brings us to the horrifying conclusion. The trap is officially sprung. We arrive in this final, inescapable room. A terrifying spectral face screams from the decay on the left, and the bloody walls proudly declare a single damning phrase, "I saw you." This proves the hooded skeleton broadcaster wasn't just blindly calling out into the dark. He was watching every single fatal mistake, observing every single ignored warning, and anticipating every step the victim willingly took straight into his web. So, knowing the exact anatomy of this psychological trap, you have to ask yourself a very uncomfortable question. When the final broadcast calls your name in the dark, and your own morbid curiosity urges you to take just one more step forward to see what's out there, will you turn back? Definitely think about that the next time you feel the irresistible urge to look into the shadows. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and remember, always, always trust your instincts.